Good morning, Port Washington. Welcome to the Budget and Facilities Committee. Mary, you want to go ahead and just ask for nominations for a budget chair so we can get started?
Happy to do that, Beth. Yes, of the committee members themselves, would somebody like to nominate one of the three members as chairperson?
I will nominate Beth Weisberg.
Are there any other nominations? Is there a second for the nomination of Beth Weisberg? Julie?
I will second the nomination.
All in favor?
I am not going to decline, so I'm in favor.
Okay, now
Congratulations, Beth.
Take that over.
Good, everybody. Mary, can we go ahead and start with an update on the Schreiber construction?
We did have a bid opening. The bids were all very competitive. The bids are actually about $134,000 over budget, but in speaking to the architect and the construction manager, we do not think that rebidding would bring us a lower cost. However, in speaking to the principal, with all of the issues of social distancing and trying to make for safe entrances to multiple areas of the high school, Dr. Pernick has concerns about going forward with the construction. Obviously, one of the roles of the construction manager is to make sure that entryways are safe. So I'm not trying to negate Dr. Pernick's concerns in any way. From a fiscal point of view, however, I do not know that next year at this time, we would find that the prices would be lower. And then in fact, that could jeopardize the overall scope of the project itself. I had asked if part of the project could be broken out so as to not impact the front entrance of the high school. And I was told it created a very large change in the project, which could then lead to potential litigation from a second low bidder. And therefore it was recommended that we either accept or reject all the bids. I don't know if Dr. Hines, if you've had any conversation with Dr. Pernick and have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, so in some ways, I agree with what he's saying. I think some of the issues that we're talking about is the health and safety, and some of the things we're talking about too is, maximizing multiple entrances to our schools, to Schreiber, I mean, so they can socially distance. The maximizing the space within the school in the cafeteria itself is something we will definitely need to do as we talk about September. So, if this was something that clearly if the pandemic wasn't here, I wouldn't be nearly as concerned, but there are a lot of safeguarding issues that we have to contend with. We have to think about too now, we have to make sure all kids the temperatures are taken. There's a lot of logistical things that we have to consider, but like Mary said, there will be some fiscal implications if and when we do postpone this. So I don't think this is an easy decision to make. The law of timing is not in our favor right now, unfortunately. I tend to try to play it safe when it comes to these things. And so, when I'm hearing what Dr. Pernick is saying, I do understand where he's coming from. I'll just leave it at that for right now.
Larry?
Yeah, is this the project that has that initial gift money that we were going to use to redo the front entrance?
Yes, that would be included along with the cafeteria funds from our school lunch fund program. And we have $600,000 in this year's transfer to capital line specifically for that cafeteria renovation as well.
So there's also bond money, I take it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if this is over budget now, if it's more over budget in a year, is that likely to impact our ability to do it at all? Or what would have to give in order to get this project done? What would we be giving up? Would we be giving up daily? Would we be giving up, so
Well,
we,
I don't.
we're using up all of our, I think we're using up all of our overage, right? All of our cushion.
We have used up our cushion. And that's why I did say the budget is $134,000 over budget. But based on the cost factors, my recommendation fiscally was to accept the bid. What will it lop off at the end? That I cannot say for sure. The bid, however, for daily is supposed to open, I think, on August 3rd. We do still have an addition to do at both Salem Elementary School and Sousa. We're supposed to renovate the Sousa auditorium. We do still have central air to be putting in, I think, in 3 of the elementaries. And Jim, I don't know if you can think of any other major projects other than those that are outstanding.
Mary and
Yes.
Jim and everybody that's asking questions, I think that at least this is just my opinion, and I'd like Jim to weigh in a little bit because he's on the Health and Safety Committee. I really do think, as much as I think we should be making a financial decision, I think our first decision here probably has to be whether this is a strong enough safety concern that we shouldn't discuss it regardless. So Jim, if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit to your opinions as far as being able, I know you've been on the front line of trying to set up things like the cafeteria and other things. What are your feelings here?
Well, if the cafeteria needs to be used for educational space, that's number one. That's a big problem because that space is going to be offline at a certain point in the project. The other areas, the front entrance, I know that was gone over really closely, but again, it wasn't. I think that was pre-COVID and coming back to school, so that really wasn't taken into consideration. So, any concerns Ira has, I'm sure are real. It's just, and again, I'm going to echo Mary and everyone, and not to put money in front of safety. We don't do that. I never do that. But if we don't award this, I'm afraid that it'll never happen. In other words, especially to get the more space you need in the cafeteria that we always needed here, because that was part of this project to get additional space, and it's a double-edged sword here, and it's a very difficult decision. But health and safety wise, that's the only thing I can see right now is the spacing of the students, if they're going to use that as a teaching area.
Okay. Nora was asking if Sousa if we don't do the Sousa extension, is that going to help with the overage, Mary? And then Rachel, you're next.
Ultimately, though, because that was later, the
Right.
Sousa extension.
Well, certainly any projects that you eliminate are going to help to balance your budget further. And I wouldn't be recommending multiple projects over budget because legally you're not allowed to have your entire project over budget. But
No.
we still have about 2 years worth of work to be done.
No, I just meant in the long run, because that's something we had discussed, like not like pre-pandemic for sure, but that Sousa's numbers probably didn't warrant that extension that we had initially was part of the plan, of course, and part of the plan of borrowing. But it's not going to help us with this year's budget because we haven't. I think Sousa was one of the last items on the list.
Can I just say something about Sousa?
Yeah.
If you don't mind. I know Sousa was not just the auditorium and a couple of classrooms, but it did involve an elevator to get to the second floor. Now that, I think we were warned in the past, not warned, or just made aware that any major project at Sousa going forward is going to have an elevator because of the state education department. Well, you know, I don't know if they would approve projects to a greater extent. So that is something to keep in mind.
I have Deb and Deb and Rachel both have questions. Before that, Mary, can I just ask one quick question? We would be awarding this bid on August 11th.
That would be the hope if
Okay.
if the board is in agreement.
I just wanted to see if we had, you know, some time because we might need more information to make the decision. So we do have, I guess, some time to continue the conversation. Rachel, go ahead.
Just in the interest of having a really good public record for people who are trying to follow the budget discussions, I think the bond in and of itself and all the details of it can already be very difficult to follow. But for many people, I think this will feel like coming in the middle of a conversation, given what's gone over the last several months. So I think that it might make sense to just have Mary and Jim, or Jim, either one, briefly outline what exactly we're talking about at the high school, which pieces we're talking about putting off.
The entryway to the high school, an expansion of the cafeteria, which included a staircase that would go to the second floor commons, which is also used as a student relaxation space, and the expansion of a technology area, which included a lot of new equipment. The room itself has a balcony with storage space on top. Jim, were there other areas that were included in that I've missed?
Interior restrooms, and I believe some ceiling work. And that's about the most. Yeah, that's the two. There's actually two extensions. There's an extension of the cafeteria space, and an extension off of near the print shop that will give a state-of-the-art area for the technology, and that would alleviate the portable space in the back.
Thank you. Deb?
Thank you. So I've actually raised the issue of the Schreiber construction for several months, and it continues to bother me because these are extraordinary circumstances, as we know, and so I think we really have to put that into context. It's not as though this is a simple inconvenience to us. That whole area, the front of Schreiber, because I sat in Dr. Pernick's coffees for months, where we all lamented how that front area was just going to be radically altered and was going to inconvenience everybody, and drop off in the morning was going to be a mess, and getting the kids into the school buildings was going to be a mess, and funneling them into different places. And that was before the pandemic and before the need for social distancing. And for my 2 cents, if there is a way to accomplish this and still keep the children safe and still have the access to the school that can have social distancing and still has access to the cafeteria, because I think the cafeteria is going to be used in several different ways that will not impinge upon social distancing with however much has to be cordoned off, then I think we can try to make this happen. But what I'm sensing from Dr. Pernick is that he knows how vital those spaces are to the school. They're really central parts of the school. And my vote is to keep the children safe. No amount of money later is going to compensate for children getting sick or staff getting sick, because we decided we needed to put an addition on at that time. Having said, it's just an unfortunate series of events, in my opinion. Having said that, is it possible to have any type of agreement with the winner of the bid for a delayed start, given that?
No,
Okay.
that I already asked.
And do we know from our attorneys if there is any way to protect us, given the fact that these are completely extraordinary circumstances? We're not willfully trying to get out of work or not honor a contract, or is there any way to protect us, so I guess we can have all of our cake and eat it too?
Well, I think the bid specifications indicated for how many days the contractors needed to maintain their pricing. And if we don't award, we have no ability, but we will not be able to hold them to the pricing beyond those. And I think it was 45 days. So and I have not been part of the instructional discussion, so I don't know. Getting the impression that the space itself is being used for instruction rather than or in addition to meals, that I was not aware of.
Can I just say something, Mary?
I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, can I just say something, if you don't mind? I'm still at the high school, that's why I'm in my car. I met with Dr. Mioli this morning, and we just had that was brought up, and again, it was, because Mary was news to me as well. So that, I guess that still has to be ironed out 100% about the teaching in the cafeteria.
Thanks, Jim. I think Emily and then Mike had a comment.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I do believe that it is important that we look at safety right now, and I would not take away Dr. Pernick's concerns and Dr. Hines' concerns about using the space, and that unfortunately this project has been put to this time period. It has been a project that we've been talking about. I was HSA president when we got the gift from the couple that passed for the entrance. So that's many, many years ago, and yet we've kind of put it part of this project. So it's an unfortunate. Now I'm wondering if there's a way that maybe there is an opportunity to relook at the project, and in light of what is taking place in the pandemic world, maybe this is kind of a gift that we don't do it now and relook at the spacing. And is there clearly we know we needed more space in the cafeteria. That was a long-standing problem, but will things change going forward? Maybe our lives will be a little different for a lot longer, and so maybe this is kind of better for us to just hold off. But I would not put the fear of the cost in front of what we know could be a real issue next year. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, go ahead.
All right. So two things. One is I think we have to be able to look at the information that we have in front of us. And I know some of us don't know what's happening with instructional, because a lot of conversations really started taking place as far as maximizing that space, every single inch within all of our schools. And unfortunately, when we're talking about a hybrid model, that would mean we have to start looking at, places that we never thought we would have classroom instruction in the content area, let's say. So cafeterias, gymnasiums, all these different places we are really just starting to look at. And until we have the plan, which will be shared with the board this week, and we know for sure what's going to happen, then I think we can then make a decision as far as what we should do moving forward. The reason why I say this is, because I know how important this work is. I know we've been waiting for this, and if I'm Mary or anybody else that's attached to this, like Jim and others, this can be deeply maddening, thinking we have to kick this can down the road potentially. I'm saying potentially, but the reality is, sometimes we get this information as it comes, and then we have to continually reassess what's happening. I don't say that he's concerned unless he really, really was. I think we all definitely agree with that. The more I think about bringing our kids back. And I think of the visitors that would come into the building, because when we talk about visitors coming into the building, there's a whole set of protocols. So whether they're construction workers or anybody else, and like many districts, they are taking a real hard line letting people into the building. So again, I think more to come once we have the actual finalized plan in place and we talk about how we maximize this space, and then we can continue this conversation.
Mike, I would say I agree with you, and I think we'll look to schedule another budget and facilities meeting before the next board meeting, which would be when we would have to accept this bid. I think that is the time to make a final decision, simply because we'll have all of the information at that point. So I think while we're all clearly in the vein of we have to do what we need to do to keep kids safe and use the spaces appropriately, no matter what. Construction can't come into play when we're making those decisions. So I think you all need to make those decisions in those instructional committees, and I'm on the building protocols committee. We'll make those decisions first, and we'll see if the construction can fit, and if it can't, then we'll have our answer. Is that reasonable to everybody, or does anybody want to continue this?
I just had one question. Beth, I agree with everything that has been said, and in light of what everyone's saying, I applaud Mary for asking if the technology component could be broken out. I'm wondering if we've taken an opportunity, and once we see instructional plans, etc., are there other opportunities when looking at construction if we can look to break out other aspects of it as well, or is the technology part the only part you can break apart? It might be just to look more creatively at how the construction would be done, and if it could be broken out into phases is all I'm asking. Take another look into it, if that makes sense.
Mary?
I think it would have to be rebid totally. As I said earlier, there's a legal issue based on the pricing. And I can ask the architect to investigate that and get back to me to see what pieces there might be that would be less intrusive.
If you could have answers for the next meeting, that would be great. Larry, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, how long would this project take if, say, on August 7th, the governor decides schools aren't opening until January? Could the work be finished by then? I know it's probably not going to happen, but I'm just curious as to what the time frame would be, or is this a year-long project or 18 months long?
Larry, that would be assuming that as he's closing schools, he's also going to allow construction to continue, because don't forget, we had to stop construction. So we have to be mindful that anytime we start, construction could also be stopped.
I know, but I'm just asking, how long is this project expected to take?
I think it was intended to take at least a year because a portion of it was discussed to happen over next summer. And that was before we thought there would be a stop on the project.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that answers that question. So we can't race it through if we're closed for any period of time.
That's
I
not
think the
necessarily true. If
plan.
school's closed, it might be able to happen faster.
Can I just say something? I think the plan to wait until after we get our hybrid plans and all in place and hear what the governor has to say makes sense. But I also think that my bet, if I had a bet, my bet would be that we can't do it because the reality is it's a new reality. And as harsh as it is to have to back off a project we've been wanting to do for so many years, and finally we're about to start it, it's superseded by the exigencies of the crisis and the space, the egress, the other people in the buildings. I mean, there's just so many factors that have been said. So
Yeah,
I think we could move. I think we could move on now to the next topic. It sounds like everybody's in agreement that we're really waiting until we have more information.
I agree, Nora. If anybody has anything, speak up now.
I just wanted to add that in speaking to Dr. Suzanne, based on the type of construction and the location of her construction, she does not have the same concerns relative to egress and so on for her students. So I will be coming to the board when I have more information about those classroom addition pieces.
Yep. Thank you, Mary. That's good. That's good information to have. Let's move on to the what we know at this point about pandemic expenses. I don't know if you want to speak to them, or if you want Dr. Hines to speak to them.
Well, I do have a copy of Ryan's email in front of me. I know that there were specific costs that the board had asked about. Would you like me to just run through that quickly and then open it up for discussion? Or,
Are you talking about the one-to-one initiative, or I was actually talking first about the specific pandemic costs that we're
oh, sorry. I'll hand that over to Jim. I don't have that information, or to Dr. Hines.
I have, in the process of, I didn't know I needed that for this morning, but I have my staff working on that right now, getting a summary. We're pretty, there's a couple of large items that we're working on right now, and that's the pods for, I want to call them pods, storage containers for the buildings, because to fit the students in on that 6-foot space, we're gonna have to empty out a large portion of the buildings. So we're working on that right now. PPE, masks and hand sanitizer, and we've been constantly working on that. I feel confident we're okay with that. That's sort of behind us. No, I shouldn't say behind us. We have a good supply to get us into a major portion of the year. And we're just, the other question is the barriers we're still working on, and that's a large expense that I don't have an exact cost on right now. But we sort of have it under control. Just going into the next phase of this, which is the actual physical space, having my staff go in, and that shouldn't be a cost. Might be some overtime involved, but I'm trying to keep the cost as down, as much as I can. We're pretty good, but I'm going to do a little more research on what we need, and actually today, and we'll get more information to Mary.
okay.
Are you still looking at desks, Jim?
Sorry about that. Desks, I have not looked into yet, and that is a good point, Mary. Desks are a big one. That I'm waiting for numbers on that.
Yeah, so the potential of ordering desks is part of the conversation as far as us maximizing space and making sure we can keep our children socially distant. We have a lot of tables in some of our elementary schools, which of course pre-pandemic was optimal. So we're trying to figure out ways to make that work for sure. I also want to say, again, to Jim's credit, we did order some items already. So, part of the concern is ordering items now to make sure the supply is there, and certainly to make sure that we receive the supplies before school starts. One of the things that we have to be very aware of is the temperature checking of our students as they enter the building. So Jim ordered some already, or we're looking to order a few more. But again, once the recommendations are finalized and we know what we have to purchase, then we're going to move forward. And as I said before, with the partitions, as of right now, we ordered those tri-fold partitions for student desks for our special needs classes as of right now. And Jim said you already ordered it. Jim, how many masks did you order already? Quite a bit.
200,000 that we have in stock.
Yeah.
And those are for staff. And we ordered a bunch of different types of gaiters. Again, and not to that. But I believe with the 200,000 for the staff, if we cut that in half, we can attack the. I hate to use the word attack, but we could attack the student population as well, and have it probably for half the year, maybe. So that's just to get a little breathing room. That's the way we've been looking
breathing
at it.
room, no pun intended. And then
no
you also
pun intended.
and you ordered
exactly.
HEPA filters as well, right? Or
came in Friday. Those are for the spaces that don't have mechanical ventilation.
How many did you order on that, Jim?
45.
Are those are the freestanding units?
Correct. We did a count in each building of where these spaces are, and we came up with 45.
And did we also look at the rooms where windows don't open, that, I mean, that's, it would
That's
be
what we're
easy.
talking about. That's
Yep.
what I'm talking
Not
about.
the windowless rooms, the rooms that the windows don't open, or.
You're talking about repairs?
Windows
or you-
that need repairs, because I know that was raised by Regina at a meeting that I was at. That there, I wasn't aware of it, but there are windows, at least in Weber, if not other buildings, that don't open. So just,
Weber is
I'm not aware of
definitely.
which buildings, but I'm sure that's something you can figure out.
I am always looking into that, and it's I need more specifics on that. And that's not you, Nora. I will take care of that.
Well, we do
It's-
have the window contract too,
Yes.
that's going to be starting window replacements at Weber.
Well, that's great, but I mean, once we bring kids in, they either have to be replaced, or they have to already replaced, or they have to be.
Right. So what I did talk to the construction manager, and if it's something we cannot get to or cannot be repaired by our staff, I instructed them to get to the problem windows first and make sure those are replaced first. And I'm working with them, and the contractor will work with us on that.
Okay.
But that's, I know that could be a little down the road, but we will make sure we have spaces that windows open. I don't think it's every window in every classroom. It might be
I
one
didn't get
window
that
here and there.
sense. No, I didn't
I'm
get the
sorry?
sense that, I did not get the sense from the conversation I heard that it was every window by any means, but that there were
There were
more
some
than
windows.
one, yes.
Right, and they have been problematic, and that is one of the reasons why we're doing the project. It's major.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. We have questions from Emily, I think, and Deb.
Sorry, yeah, my question really was with regards to all the funding that we had set aside. I don't remember if I got a little distracted, sorry, so I didn't know if Jim said this. Are we staying in line with the budget, the money, the five that we had set aside, or do we think we're going to go over it? That's my question.
I'd be honest with you, I'm ordering, and I'm just hoping that I'm hoping we're staying within it. But as soon as we start ordering desks, I believe we might go over. But again, we'll know that better by today.
Okay,
When we have more solid information on what we purchased already.
Deb?
Thank you. I know the heating system in some of the buildings tends to go awry during the wrong times. Is that being checked as well to make sure that's under control so that the classrooms aren't overheated?
Yeah, last heating season, over the past 4 years after the energy performance contract, the heating in the problem buildings were Schreiber and Weber. They have exponentially been taken care of, and I've been proactively asking the questions because I stopped getting complaints. So I know it was such a long time of complaints and hearing about it that it seems like it's still ongoing, but they're very sporadic issues that we can handle more quickly.
Right.
Because it was a large scale issue that had a lot to do with controls. Most of the controls in the buildings have been replaced, and we have a way of monitoring situations now, and the heating is not as problematic as it was the past 3 years.
Great. I have two more questions. Just to be clear, the masks for the kids, the district is not responsible for supplying masks to the kids. This is in case the kids don't bring a mask to school. Because I don't want
Yes.
parents to get the feeling as though we're
I-
doling out masks to kids every single day. That
I totally agree. On
that's
the
what
off
I'm-
chance, yeah, well, so, we're also, and again, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves with what we're looking to present to the board regarding the plan. It's, we will be relying on parents too. Again, I don't want to get ahead too much as far as taking their children or their child's temperature before they come to school. So, and we need to clearly articulate that as far as what expectations are as we work together with our parents as far as what we would like them to be responsible for, and certainly what we are. But as far as masks are concerned, we wanted to make sure that we had more than enough, again, for our staff and for our kids. So that's why Jim, when he referenced the Gators, the Gator masks, those are really more for the kids. I mean, I anticipate, it's hard to even talk about right now, back to school shopping, right? I mean, the commercials will be coming out soon if they haven't already. You're getting not a Trapper Keeper, but you're getting a notebook, you're getting your lunchbox, and you'll probably be buying your children a mask now at this point. But we would rather be safe than sorry as far as having too many masks, especially when we don't know what supply and demand will look like. And we got them at a real reasonable rate too. So, but to Emily's point, as far as, budget concerns, or, how much we allocated, and thank goodness the board had enough foresight to put away, or to make sure we had $500,000, to use for this pandemic. The desks would be a major expenditure. That's why we're trying to figure out if there are alternate ways for us to have our kids come in and still be, socially distant.
Okay, I have one more question. So in the event that something happens between now and August 1st, or between the time when the governor decides to open the schools, that schools end up being shut down before they can even reopen. I imagine this is almost like an Army-Navy stockpile of stuff that we may not end up using, or end up using the way we need to. I don't suppose there's a return policy on any of this.
No, but I will say this, instead of us ordering for the full year when it came to the masks, we were pretty, I think, conservative. And especially speaking, with other school districts as far as how much they ordered. So we ordered, I think, just enough right now, and then we would reassess, sometime in late fall, early winter, to see where we are in regard to supplies.
I have to say that I'm guessing that there is resale value for PPE, given that it's just going to be needed everywhere. So I'm not so concerned about that, because we're going to open at some point. So no matter when we open, I don't see the plan changing. If it wasn't September and it was January, and if it wasn't January and it was March, we're going to need the stuff no matter what. So I don't think it's money not well spent at some point.
I wasn't insinuating that we shouldn't have spent the money, just so you understand. I was just trying to make sure that if we end up, like at the end of World War II with all the stockpile, can we make hay out of sunshine?
I would guarantee you there's no return, but perhaps given the shortage of PPE, there would be some place for it to go. Dr. Hines, one of the questions I know that keeps coming up is we had cut the permanent subs, and I know we've had discussions as a board. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. Yeah. So there are so many conversations about what to expect when September comes, and part of that conversation is how many students will return to school, and another one is, as far as staff is concerned, and if and when some staff members, let's say educators in particular, are unable to come back to school, we need to make sure that we have enough certified educators to take their place in the meantime. So, and again, this is part of the expense of the $500,000 for, what we set aside for pandemic funds. And so we're bringing the permanent subs back right now. We'll start hiring very soon, and we will use them, I have a feeling, often throughout the year. So we're bringing the permanent subs back. We'll certainly update the board as far as where we are when the process begins. Dr. Shields and I just had this conversation last week, so we're moving forward.
Thank you, Mike. I think that's going to set some minds at ease that we're concerned about that. Does anybody else have anything that they want to ask, budget and facilities wise?
That's, is this a time? Can I ask the question regarding the federal funding acts, FEMA?
Yep.
Wonderful. So state ed has published some documentation saying that educational institutions can apply for CARES Act funding as well as FEMA funding for PPE, FEMA specifically for PPE. Mary, do you have any insight as to whether or not we will be taking advantage of applying for any of this, or if it applies to us?
We will definitely apply for whatever options are available. My understanding with FEMA is that items must have been ordered from state contracts and use normal district purchasing policy in order to be eligible. So I see Jim shaking his head because we didn't necessarily, I don't think, use purchasing policy for the masks in general, even though it was an advantageous pricing. But we will look into everything that we are eligible for, and we'll get back to you with that.
Just to clarify, the rules were lifted for the pandemic. So when things came available, in order to be proactive, we ordered them.
Right, the rules were lifted for the pandemic, but FEMA rules are
Right.
different from pandemic rules. So
Exactly.
there's always a loophole.
Yep.
Okay. Mary, if you can get back to us at the next meeting, and everybody, I think if I'll double check with everybody, but if August 10th, same time, 9 o'clock is going to work for everybody, we'll try and have a meeting before. Well, if that date doesn't work, we'll find another date, but we'll schedule another meeting to close out some of these conversations before the board meeting where we have to pass all of this. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking time. I will see you all again in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.